Pei Ling transmigrates into a dangerous cultivation world with a one-click training system that promises unlimited power but comes with a hilarious catch. It completely hijacks his body to steal resources from the most terrifying people imaginable, rob the sect leader, beat up his seniors, and force the terrifying Holy Saintess into dual cultivation. He tries to give the system a 1-star review, but it just keeps ruining his life while making him accidentally invincible. This is the funniest cultivation disaster you will ever see. The main character ends up in a different world, where he finds out he has 38 mothers who are all very kind. To stay safe and grow up without trouble, he has to make sure he only gets a score of 1 on every test. He's afraid that if he does better than his older brother, who has some intellectual challenges, his stepmother might try to get rid of him. Pei Ling grew up in a respected group that works to help people. He has a very successful father and dozens of mothers. Every day, he also has to look after his stepmother's assistant, worrying that she might give him too much credit or rewards. When he returns to his tiny, messy home that's in worse shape than an outdoor restroom, he smiles to himself because he successfully made it through another day. However, things are about to change. After 18 years of struggling, he finally saves up 300 low-grade spirit stones. He decides to activate his system. His profile shows his name as Pei Ling, his race is human, and that he is at the 2nd layer of the Foundation establishment stage. Once the system detects enough stones, it asks if he wants to turn it on. He says yes without a second thought. When the interface opens, it looks just like an old Windows 95 window, which really surprises him. Even though the style is a bit weird, he figures it's better than nothing. He looks through his options and finds the only skill he can learn right now: the Iron Bone technique. This is a very intense style of training that can be dangerous for anyone without a strong will. When he sees that it takes 10 years to master, he's disappointed. He doesn't want to spend decades training after already struggling for 18 years. Then he notices a one-click training button that looks like it has some special features. As soon as he clicks it, a strange energy fills his body. The system tells him that it's taking over to handle the upgrade automatically. It warns him that he'll lose control of his movements during the process, and tells him not to panic. Soon, his body starts training on its own, and he feels a rush of pure energy. He thinks the system is actually great until it sends a message saying he's missing some specific pills needed for the training. Pei Ling knows these pills are rare, and even the leaders of his family don't have many. He wonders where he's supposed to find them. Suddenly, the system says it will provide 10 of these pills for free. He's excited, thinking it's a newcomer bonus. But then, his body stands up, kicks the door open, and starts running toward a specific spot. He's panicked because he spent 18 years trying to stay hidden, and now he's running through the courtyard out in the open. He realizes he's heading toward the home of a dangerous leader. He begs the system to stop and just take a quick look, but instead, his body kicks down the front door. He yells for himself to stop as he charges toward the main house. The system pauses for a second, making him feel relieved, but then it punches through the door, leaving him feeling hopeless. This room belongs to a leader known for being very aggressive, even toward his own family. The system doesn't care, though. It makes him walk over to a cabinet and open a drawer where he finds a bottle of the pills. The system then claims it has successfully gifted him the items. Pei Ling realizes the system is just stealing them, but he's forced to swallow them and start training right there on the spot. He feels exhausted by the situation, but the pills are actually very effective. His training speed increases 10 times over. He can feel his power growing quickly, and he soon reaches the 3rd layer of the Foundation establishment stage. He manages to achieve things that others find nearly impossible. When the system finishes and asks for a 5-star review, Pei Ling is so annoyed that he gives it a 1-star rating instead. While he's feeling a bit of satisfaction from the bad review, he suddenly hears a woman laughing nearby. He turns around nervously and sees a woman who seems to have appeared out of nowhere. She invites him to join her in a deep spiritual journey. Seeing her reach out toward him, he gets a cold sweat and tries to back away. Thanks to his new strength from the breakthrough, he's able to jump over the back wall to escape. Just as he thinks he's safe, a creepy voice from behind asks what the 7th young master is doing there. Pei Ling had just managed to get away from Zhen Jinshan's place when he ran into a family servant. The servant told him to get to the main hall immediately, because the head of the family had an important announcement to make. Pei Ling nervously asked if Zhen Jinshan had come back yet. The servant snapped at him, saying that he hadn't returned, and warned Pei Ling not to waste time unless he wanted to get in trouble with the family. Pei Ling quickly took off, thinking that Zhen Jinshan must have gone straight to the hall, which meant he didn't know about the stolen pills yet. He knew the Pei clan was very strict about their rules. If someone skipped a meeting without a good reason, the family would send experts to track them down. When he arrived at the hall, he saw Zhen Jinshan sitting in the guest of honor's seat, while the clan head sat next to him. Pei Ling tried to blend into the crowd as the group gathered. Zhen Jinshan announced a new mission, explaining that a traitor named Wu Tingji had escaped to Mount Yuanlao. He told everyone to go search for him and promised a reward of 50 bone-tempering pills to anyone who found a lead. Pei Ling was shocked by the massive reward, and even the clan head seemed surprised by the generosity. When the crowd didn't move fast enough, Zhen Jinshan got angry and asked why they were still standing there. The clan head quickly stood up and explained that they were worried because the traitor was at the 7th layer of the Foundation establishment stage, while their own disciples were much weaker. To a powerful leader like Zhen Jinshan, that level was nothing, but for the Pei clan, it was a huge threat. Even the clan head had only just reached that same level, whereas Zhen Jinshan was way ahead of them all. Zhen Jinshan told them not to worry, saying that the traitor was badly injured, and that even a regular person could probably catch him. He clarified that he only needed them to find the man, not fight him. He then showed them a magical image of the traitor so they would know who to look for, and told them to signal him once they found a trace. Pei Ling was secretly happy about this. He planned to use the mission as an excuse to leave the city and run away forever. Meanwhile, Zhen Jinshan went back to his home. But instead of going to his room, he went to a creepy cottage in the back, decorated with skull wind chimes. Inside, a woman coldly asked if he had found the person yet. Zhen Jinshan tried to explain that the traitor had escaped with a secret manual, but she cut him off. She called him useless and warned him that if he didn't find the manual within 3 days, she would use his soul to power her magical tools. Pei Ling followed the others to the mountain, but he was focused on his escape plan. He intended to head to the next city, put on a disguise, and join a traveling group to disappear for good. However, as he was running, his legs suddenly went weak, and his body felt freezing cold. He had never felt this way before. He fell to the ground, realizing it must be something the woman from the creepy screen had done to him. Feeling his mind getting foggy, he quickly called out for the system to start training. Once the system took over, his will became incredibly strong. He let out a roar, and mentally fought off the female ghost's influence. He felt safe as long as the system was active, but then a notification popped up. The system warned him that his energy was dangerously low, and that continuing would cause permanent damage. To help him out, the system said it would provide 3 vitality pills for free. Pei Ling was terrified because he knew what free meant by now. He tried to tell the system not to take them, but his body turned around and ran right back toward the mountain. In a hidden cave nearby, an old man was feeling miserable and pulled out his last bottle of vitality pills. Just as he was about to take them, Pei Ling appeared, snatched the bottle, and swallowed 3 of the pills instantly before tossing the bottle aside. The system announced that the pills had been delivered and went back to training. Pei Ling sat down to meditate right there. The old man was furious that his last pills were stolen and that someone was casually training right in front of him. He lost his temper, grabbed the empty bottle, swallowed whatever was left, and tried to hit Pei Ling over the head. Because someone was attacking him, the system stopped the training and asked Pei Ling for another 5-star rating. Pei Ling was beyond frustrated, thinking the system was anything but helpful. As Pei Ling watched the old man's rage boil over, he was about to beg for mercy. However, before he could say a word, a powerful strike sent him flying 60 feet through the air. When the dust finally settled, Pei Ling was paralyzed on the ground, staring in shock at the deep injuries on his arm. His mind raced as he realized how strong the old man actually was. He knew that if he didn't find a way to stall for time, he wouldn't survive the encounter. Meanwhile, the old man was surprised to see that Pei Ling had managed to block the attack with his arm. Using a special technique to inspect his opponent, the old man discovered that Pei Ling had developed an incredibly strong physical defense. Suspecting that the boy must have found some rare treasure or secret training, the old man demanded to know how he had achieved such a powerful body. Pei Ling, terrified, immediately started apologizing. He told the old man he truly regretted taking the pills, but he honestly had no idea why his body was so resilient. Pei Ling hoped he could talk his way out of the situation, but the old man's next question made things even worse. He asked if Pei Ling had come into the mountains specifically to hunt him down. Pei Ling panicked and shook his head, knowing that admitting to being a bounty hunter would mean the end of him. Instead, he decided to tell the truth about his earlier trouble, explaining in great detail how he had stolen the pills from Zhen Jinshan. The old man was stunned by the story. He couldn't believe a kid would be bold enough to steal from someone as dangerous as Zhen Jinshan. Pei Ling acted shy, joking that it was just youthful recklessness and that everyone makes mistakes. He added that the leader probably hadn't noticed yet, because he hadn't been back to see the mess Pei Ling left behind. Seeing that the old man was starting to believe him, Pei Ling tried to act friendly, suggesting that since they both had the same enemy, they were practically on the same team. The old man pushed him away in disgust and asked why, if they were on the same side, Pei Ling had stolen his last pills. Pei Ling explained that he was desperate, mentioning the strange screen with the woman's image he had seen at the leader's house. The old man's face went pale. He asked if Pei Ling had really looked at the seductive ghost painting, and expressed shock that the boy was still alive. Pei Ling admitted he had seen it, and explained that he'd been haunted by ghosts the whole way there. He claimed he only took the pills to save his own life from the painting's curse. The old man nodded to himself, realizing that someone at Pei Ling's level would definitely need extra energy to survive that kind of dark power. His expression shifted into a sneaky grin, and he suggested they make a deal. He pulled out a valuable secret manual and offered to share the technique if Pei Ling helped him escape the mountain safely. Pei Ling looked at the manual and acted unimpressed, asking if that was all he had. This made the old man furious. He shouted that this was the very manual Zhen Jinshan was willing to do anything to get his hands on, and that his entire group had been targeted because of it. As the old man held the scroll and complained about his situation, a notification popped up from the system. It detected an unknown technique and began recording the information. Pei Ling was surprised and impressed that the system could do this. The recording was slow, so he did his best to keep the old man talking to buy more time. The old man noticed Pei Ling's anxious look and gave him a playful slap on the head, thinking he had finally intimidated the boy. He tucked the scroll back into his pocket, completely unaware that the system had already finished copying every word. When the system asked him to name the new skill, Pei Ling didn't want to waste time thinking, so he just called it the nameless cultivation method. Now his only goal was to find a way out of there as fast as possible. Pei Ling acted like he was helping the old man, but then he suddenly turned around and pointed, shouting in shock that Zhen Jinshan was standing right there. Wu Tingxi was so terrified that he completely lost his composure, literally wetting his pants. Pei Ling took advantage of the distraction to sprint away. By the time the old man realized he had been tricked, Pei Ling was gone. Furious, Wu Tingxi yelled about the kid's deception and fired a beam of light toward him. Pei Ling ran blindly through the woods until he hit a dead end. As he saw the old man closing in, he did a quick calculation. His body had mostly recovered, while the old man was only at about a third of his full strength. He realized he could actually win this fight. With an angry shout, Pei Ling used a powerful shoulder throw to slam the old man into the ground. Seeing that Wu Tingxi was barely holding on, Pei Ling quickly finished the job. He gathered up the secret scroll and the pills before turning to continue his escape. However, that familiar feeling of weakness washed over him again. Remembering the curse the old man had placed on him before dying, Pei Ling realized he had no choice but to go back to the Pei residence. He planned to trade the scroll to Zhen Jinshan in exchange for breaking the poison's hold on him. When he arrived, he found out that Zhen Jinshan wasn't there, but someone even more terrifying was. Compared to her, Zhen Jinshan was like a tiny insect. This was Li Lieye, the future leader of the powerful Chongming sect. Even though they had been arranged to marry when they were kids, the gap between them was huge. She was already at the peak of the golden core level, while he hadn't even reached the 4th layer of his stage. With just a single look, her powerful presence forced Pei Ling to the ground. To save himself, he quickly confessed everything to her, hoping she could remove the ghost poison. When she asked where the traitor was, Pei Ling told her that Wu Tingxi was already gone, and that he had hidden the secret scroll in a safe spot. Looking at his serious injuries, the woman could tell he was telling the truth. She tossed him a bottle of pills and told him that if he meditated after taking them, he could clear the cold poison from his system. As for the curse, she said Zhen Jinshan could remove it once the scroll was retrieved. Then, she vanished instantly. Pei Ling felt relieved to be out from under her pressure, but his curse flared up again. He knew he had to hold out until she returned, and his only hope was to let the system take over. He opened the familiar menu and, remembering his previous experiences, he chose the nameless art for automatic training. As the system's voice confirmed the start, he felt that familiar sense of comfort. Meanwhile, Li Lieye successfully found the secret manual, but as she went to check it, a sudden attack lunged out from the pages. Luckily, she was fast enough to dodge it. The manual floated in the air and slowly turned into the ghost of an old man named Luo Qiao, a former elder. She hadn't expected a piece of his soul to be hiding inside the scroll. When he attacked, she stayed calm and used her energy to summon a giant, fierce serpent. This was a special spiritual lock designed to trap ghosts. The old man was caught and couldn't escape. Realizing he couldn't win, he decided to self-destruct his soul to take her and the manual down with him. Li Lieye didn't expect him to be so extreme. She jumped forward, risking everything to grab the manual right as he exploded. She managed to save the scroll, but the blast from such a powerful spirit left her seriously injured. She needed to get back to the residence to recover quickly. However, she had no idea that back at the house, Pei Ling's system was about to get him into trouble once again. At the same time, Pei Ling was busy training with the nameless art and was secretly enjoying it. He never expected that practicing this technique would feel so amazing. Suddenly, a notification popped up from the system explaining that the nameless art was actually a partner-based training technique and required another person to continue. Since it detected that he didn't have a partner, the system announced it would provide one for free. Pei Ling was speechless, realizing he was about to get into trouble again. The system took over his body and started running fast, making him feel like his head was going to explode. He cursed the system, feeling like it wouldn't stop until he lost his mind. He worried because, in the Pei residence, almost everyone around was a family member. The system quickly reached its destination, and to his horror, it was the courtyard belonging to the Saintess. Pei Ling held onto a tiny bit of hope, wondering if the system had made a mistake since he thought Li Lieye was still outside the city. But a second later, the system pushed the door open and marched straight in. Pei Ling was in a full panic. He sarcastically told the system it was amazing, and that they were definitely going down together. Inside, Li Lieye was trying to heal her injuries. She noticed someone outside, but didn't think much of it, assuming it was someone coming to help her with the curse. She calmly told the visitor that she would see them in a moment, but the door was suddenly kicked open with a loud bang. The system even made him strike what it thought was a cool pose. Li Lieye was furious, and immediately launched a powerful attack at him. At the same time, Pei Ling's body threw a jade green pill he had taken from Wu Tingxi. The pill exploded, filling the room with thick smoke. It turned out to be a special soul-suppressing powder, the traitor's secret weapon that had somehow ended up with Pei Ling. Because she was already exhausted and injured, Li Lieye collapsed and lost consciousness. Pei Ling was shocked that she went down so easily. He wondered if the system was just that strong, or if her injuries were worse than he thought. The system gently carried her to the bed. For a moment, Pei Ling felt relieved, thinking the system was actually being respectful, and that they should leave immediately. However, the system then reached out and removed her veil. Pei Ling was stunned by how beautiful she was. The system announced that the partner had been acquired, and that the formal training would now begin. Pei Ling felt a huge conflict between his common sense and his impulses. But as the system continued the process, his logic completely vanished. He felt like no man could resist such a situation. As the training continued, Pei Ling felt a strange, powerful force flowing through his entire body. Not only did the injuries from his earlier fight heal instantly, but his recent breakthrough in power began to advance even further. But then he saw the Saintess frown slightly in her sleep, and he broke out in a cold sweat. He had no idea what kind of trouble he would be in once she woke up. He was certain his life, as he knew it was over. Just then, Zhen Jinshan arrived back at the residence and heard from the head of the family that the traitor was gone, and that Li Lieye had personally retrieved the items. Zhen Jinshan was secretly happy, thinking his senior might finally reward him for his help. Little did he know that his respected senior was currently in a very difficult situation because of Pei Ling. However, his mood soured when he noticed that the pills in his cabinet were missing. He asked who had broken in while he was away. A ghost drifted out from the screen in his room, taking the form of a woman, and whispered that it was Pei Ling. She added that the boy was currently at his senior's place, the Fuyun courtyard. Meanwhile, inside the courtyard, the woman on the bed was slowly waking up. She could feel a rush of pure energy flowing into her, which was actually helping her injuries heal quickly. The feeling was so warm and comfortable that she found it hard to fight against. When she finally opened her eyes and saw a stranger there, she immediately realized what was happening. She raised her arm to strike him, but he caught her wrist. Not only did he stop her, but he also managed to keep her pinned down. All the while, the system was still in control of Pei Ling's body, pushing his training to the limit. As she felt the energy growing and the power shifting, she felt deeply embarrassed. While they were caught up in this intense session, Zhen Jinshan arrived at the entrance of the courtyard. Seeing the broken gate, he was shocked and wondered who would dare to trespass there. Inside, Pei Ling looked at the woman and saw the pure anger in her eyes. He felt conflicted. While the boost in power felt amazing, he knew he was going to regret this later. The system, however, didn't care about his feelings. Once the energy reached its peak and the process was complete, Pei Ling finally regained control of his own body. The system sent its usual message about a successful automated session and asked for a 5-star rating. Disclaimer: this is purely a fictional story, made for entertainment only. Don't be influenced to hurt anyone's emotions. Or don't do squeezing before marriage. If you still go ahead, it's completely your own responsibility. Exhausted, Pei Ling collapsed. He took a deep breath and looked right into Li Lieyu's eyes, which looked like she wanted to tear him apart. He knew there was no time to explain, and that he needed to leave immediately. But just then, he heard footsteps and Zhen Jinshan's voice outside, demanding to know who was trespassing. Pei Ling felt like he couldn't breathe. Outside, Zhen Jinshan was stunned to see that his senior's door was also broken. He assumed Pei Ling was just there to steal more things. He decided he was going to punish the boy on behalf of the family. Suddenly, the bells on the roof began to ring loudly. The sound was so powerful that Zhen Jinshan was thrown back, even coughing up blood. He immediately dropped to his knees, begging his senior for forgiveness. Then, her familiar icy voice came from inside the room, sounding more furious than ever before. Zhen Jinshan didn't waste a second. He turned around and ran away as fast as he could. Pei Ling looked at the woman, feeling incredibly awkward. He started to apologize, but before he could finish, she walked right past him behind a screen to wash up and compose herself. Seeing this, Pei Ling quickly got dressed, planning to make a run for it. However, the system popped up again, asking for a 5-star review if he was satisfied. Without hesitation, Pei Ling gave it a 1-star rating. He thought to himself that if he could actually uninstall the system, he would have kicked it out a long time ago. The system apologized, stating it had failed to provide a satisfactory experience. As an apology, it offered a free nourishing essence pill. Before Pei Ling could even react, the system took over his body again. It reached into Li Lieyu's torn clothes on the bed and pulled out a small purse, taking a pill from it. The system then announced that the pill had been delivered and wished him a successful journey. Pei Ling was completely stunned. He couldn't believe the system would make him steal from the Saintess right after everything else that had happened. He felt like he was being forced into being a total scoundrel. He quickly picked up the pill, intending to put it back. Suddenly, he felt a cold chill behind him. He turned around to find Li Liey standing there. With a freezing look, she asked him exactly what he thought he was doing. To her, it looked like he was being completely shameless. Not only had he forced himself on her, but now he was digging through her personal belongings to steal her medicine. Caught red-handed with a pink accessory on his head while messing with her clothes, Pei Ling realized there was no way to explain his way out of this. He felt incredibly bitter and blamed the dog system, wishing he could leave it 10,000 negative reviews. A moment later, a massive explosion rocked the area, shocking Zhen Jinshan, who was nearby. Luckily, the Saintess didn't actually harm her future husband. The attack just barely missed him. Pei Ling couldn't understand why she had spared him, not realizing that she had actually just finished removing the curse from his body. Just then, Zi Zinshan and a relative named Pei Hongnian arrived. Hearing the noise, Pei Hongnian was shocked to see Pei Ling there and asked what he was doing. When Zi Jinshan heard Pei Ling's name, his expression soured immediately. He went straight to Li Liey and told her that Pei Ling was a liar who deserved a harsh punishment. Instead of agreeing, she simply slapped him aside, leaving him on the ground. Without saying a word, she pulled a small jade boat from her robes. With a quick gesture, the boat grew until it was a 3-story floating ship. She stepped onto the vessel and told the group that it was time to return to the sect. Pei Ling was relieved, thinking he had finally survived the whole ordeal and could stay behind. However, the ship didn't move. Pei Ling looked up and realized Li Liey was staring directly at him. He had a bad feeling and tried to sneak away, but Zhen Jinshan called him out, telling him to hurry up and get on board. With no other choice, Pei Ling reluctantly stepped onto the ship. The vessel took off, turning into a streak of light as it headed toward the Zhangming sect. Even though it was his first time flying, Pei Ling was too stressed to enjoy the view. He stayed hunched over on the deck, trying to stay out of sight. Inside the cabin, 2 other women were watching him. confused as to why their master would personally help him with the curse from the painting. The drama wasn't over yet, though. Zhen Jinshan approached with Pei Hongyan, looking for a fight. With a look of anger, he demanded to know who gave Pei Ling the courage to steal his bone-tempering pills. Just as he was about to attack, he noticed that the marks from the curse were gone. He realized that his senior must have removed them herself. He suddenly thought that she must value the kid quite a bit, and felt glad he hadn't acted too recklessly yet. Seeing that Zhen Jinshan didn't seem interested in making a move, Pei Ling let out a quiet sigh of relief. However, Pei Hongyan, who was standing nearby, suddenly shouted in surprise. He noticed that Pei Ling had already reached the 4th level of his training stage, even though he had only been at the 2nd level just a few days ago. Hearing this, Zhen Jinshan realized something was up. He knew the special pills could usually only be taken once, so he wondered if the boy had somehow managed to train 10 times faster than normal in a single day. He figured this must be why his senior found the kid so valuable. He then pulled out a massive, intimidating cleaver. Pei Ling was terrified, worrying that he was about to be attacked. Pei Hongyan recognized the weapon as the life-loathing blade, and wondered what was about to happen. To their surprise, Zhen Jinshan spoke calmly. He mentioned that since the two of them helped catch the traitor but didn't get a share of the reward earlier, he would give them a chance to earn something. He explained that the sect believed in being fair. He turned the handle toward them and held the sharp edge with just 2 fingers, promising to use only 20% of his power. He told them that whoever could pull the blade from his grip could keep it. Pei Hongyan was thrilled and stepped up immediately. He grabbed the handle and pulled with everything he had, but the blade wouldn't move an inch. Instead, the dark energy from the weapon actually knocked him to the ground. Zhen Jinshan gave a mocking smile and turned to Pei Ling, telling him it was his turn. Pei Ling waved his hands, trying to decline. He didn't trust that Zhen Jinshan was being kind, and felt that his own strength was too low to succeed anyway. But Zhen Jinshan's face darkened, and he accused Pei Ling of looking down on the weapon. Just as the tension was peaking, 2 women in elegant flowing outfits appeared. They were the Saintess's ghostly assistants. Zhen Jinshan looked nervous and immediately showed them respect, asking if the Saintess had any orders. One of the assistants, Wu Liu, walked over to Pei Ling and playfully flicked his chin, commenting on how handsome he was. But her tone changed instantly to a cold warning. She told him to pull the blade quickly, threatening to skin him alive if he disturbed her master. Left with no choice, Pei Ling stepped forward. Zhen Jinshan felt smug, thinking a 4th level student had no chance. However, his expression changed when Pei Ling started pulling, and the blade actually began to slide out from his fingers. Desperate not to lose, Zhen Jinshan secretly broke his promise and increased his strength, causing Pei Ling to fail. As Zhen Jinshan was about to brag about his win, the assistants interrupted. One of them, Zhao Ni, remarked that they already had one useless person on the boat and didn't need another. She casually mentioned that the lampshade in their master's room was getting old and suggested skinning Pei Ling to make a new one. Pei Ling was horrified, wondering if the Saintess actually knew how cruel her staff was. Wu Liu then stepped in, suggesting that since Pei Ling was from a remote area, they should give him a fairer chance. She proposed that Zhen Jinshan limit himself to only 15% of his power. Zhao Ni agreed, and Wu Liu smiled sweetly at Pei Ling, telling him he better work hard unless he wanted to end up as furniture. Zhen Jinshan watched them and realized this must be what the Saintess wanted. He knew he was probably going to lose his weapon, but he had to play along. He acted like he didn't care, and handed the blade to Pei Ling one more time. As Pei Ling pulled with all his might, the prized blade finally slid free. Zhen Jinshan looked like he was about to burst into tears of frustration, but he forced himself to tell Pei Ling to use the weapon well, and never to let its reputation down. Pei Ling quickly thanked him, and Wu Liu added some praise of her own before leading Pei Ling into the cabin to rest. As soon as they stepped inside, the air turned freezing cold. The sound of doors banging and thumping echoed around them, making it clear that this was exactly the kind of eerie place you'd expect from a dark sect. Suddenly, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared from a room behind them, and a wave of chilling energy rushed toward Pei Ling. At the last second, Wu Liu let out a sharp scolding, and the energy slowly pulled back. Pei Ling thanked her again, but she acted like it was no big deal. Soon, they arrived at his room. However, Wu Liu didn't leave. Instead, she turned to him and asked if she could ask him a question. Pei Ling didn't dare say no. As soon as he agreed, she moved so fast she was practically touching his nose. Her pink eyes stared right into his, and her freezing fingertips brushed against his neck. She asked him why he carried the scent of her master on him. Pei Ling was terrified, his heart racing, as he wondered if she knew exactly what had happened between him and the Saintess. She tilted her head, her cold hand caressing his cheek, and whispered that even someone as strong as Zhen Jinshan couldn't resist her master's magical bells. She was curious about what made him so special that he could act as if nothing had happened. Pei Ling felt both shocked and deeply embarrassed. He realized she had likely seen everything, but he knew it was actually the system that had protected him from the magical music. Stammering, he claimed it was probably just his unique physical makeup. He mentioned that even the traitor they captured earlier had commented on how unusually strong his body was. Wu Liu seemed to think about this. She noted that he had a very stable soul and a powerful body, making him a perfect subject to bring back to the sect for research. She casually mentioned that her master might even extract his soul for experiments to see what made him tick. Pei Ling broke into a cold sweat. He realized the terrifying truth. They didn't bring him along because he was special. They brought him along to be a lab rat. Wu Liu leaned in close to his ear and warned him to be careful, saying her master's methods of questioning were impossible to resist. Before he could react, she hit him with a quick strike, knocking him out cold. The last thing Pei Ling saw before everything went black was Wu Liu's sinister smile and the elegant figure of Li Liye walking toward him. Whatever happened next was clearly going to be intense, as the floating ship continued its long journey toward the Heavy Mist sect. Inside the room, Pei Ling was sweating heavily for some reason he couldn't quite explain. Outside, a few disciples were complaining about how slowly the ship was moving. It had been 2 weeks, and they still hadn't reached the sect. They had no idea that the owner of the ship had been occupied with Pei Ling the entire time. In that room, time seemed to stand still, and half a month passed before anyone realized it. Meanwhile, Zhen Jinshan told Pei Hongnian to prepare to take Pei Ling to the outer sect. Pei Hongnian was confused and asked why a kid like Pei Ling was qualified for the outer sect, but Zhen Jinshan didn't bother explaining. It was an order from Li Liye, and he wasn't about to question her. When Pei Ling finally woke up, he noticed his inner energy had grown significantly, though his back and waist felt pretty sore. Just then, he heard Pei Hongnian shouting at his door. When Pei Ling slowly opened it, he looked pale and exhausted, like he hadn't slept in weeks. Pei Hongnian told him they were almost at the Heavy Mist sect, and that he needed to pack his things immediately. Pei Ling panicked. He shut the door, worrying about how he would survive in such a dangerous place. He was already thinking about how to escape when a purple mist filled the room. Li Liye appeared out of nowhere and tossed a secret manual at his head. She gave him a very simple and terrifying choice: master the technique within 10 days or face the consequences. Then she vanished. Pei Ling looked at the manual, which was titled the Bloodthirsty Blade Technique. As soon as he opened it, his system notified him that it was recording the new skill. Pei Ling felt a surge of pride, thinking that with his special advantage, he didn't have anything to worry about. For the first time, he was actually happy to have the system around. After half a month of travel, the ship finally arrived. Following Pei Hongnian onto the deck, Pei Ling was amazed by how busy and grand everything looked compared to his hometown. Pei Hongnian explained that they were at the Dust-Cutting Terrace, the place where new disciples leave their old lives behind to become immortals. He then led Pei Ling toward the registration for the outer sect. Pei Ling was nervous about meeting powerful people, and thought about suggesting he just start as a basic worker instead. But Pei Hongnian wouldn't hear it, telling him it was an order and asking if he really wanted to go against Zhen Jinshan's wishes. Pei Ling quickly agreed to go along. They soon reached the inheritance hall, where they found a messy-looking old man relaxing with some drinks. The old man seemed annoyed at being disturbed. Suddenly, the hall was filled with floating soul lamps. Before Pei Ling knew what was happening, the old man gestured toward him, and Pei Ling felt his body lock up. A small drop of his essence was pulled from his forehead and merged into one of the lamps. The old man told him that now that his lamp was lit, he was officially a member of the Heavy Mist sect. He handed over a book of rules and told him to leave. Pei Ling was actually happy to see such a thick book of rules. He figured that as long as there were clear guidelines to follow, he could find a way to stay safe and survive. Pei Ling was caught up in his own thoughts and couldn't help but laugh to himself. However, Pei Hongnian quickly corrected him, explaining that once he actually read the handbook, he would realize that the biggest rule of the Heavy Mist sect was that there were no rules at all. This revelation left the main character trembling in fear, especially as he spotted 2 very intimidating men nearby. Luckily, Pei Hongnian stepped in just in time. He handed Pei Ling a nameplate and a storage bag. When Pei Ling saw that the nameplate was actually made from a piece of bone, he felt a bit sick to his stomach, thinking it really suited a dark sect like this. Pei Hongnian warned him that the nameplate was his most valuable possession and could literally save his life in a crisis. He then pulled a small paper boat from his pocket, which grew in size when he tossed it into the clouds. He jumped on and told Pei Ling to follow him so they could head to his new home. Pei Ling was a bit worried about how sturdy a paper boat could be, but once they took off, it was surprisingly stable. As Pei Ling was admiring the view of the clouds, a green feather drifted past, followed by a massive green bird. Before Pei Ling could even blink, the bird swiped its claw and flipped their boat over. He was terrified and confused as to why there were dangerous creatures flying around the sect. He reached for his weapon to defend them, but Pei Hongnian stopped him, worried that using a blade would ruin his boat. While they were distracted, the boat crashed into a mountain, sending them both falling. Fortunately, because they were cultivators, they managed to survive the fall without serious injuries. Pei Hongnian ended up hanging from a tree, still complaining about his ruined boat. Suddenly, they heard someone nearby shout that they had found them. 2 aggressive-looking people approached, and Pei Ling realized they must have been the ones who sent the bird after them. He was ready to stand his ground, but he was shocked to see Pei Hongnian immediately turn into a total suck-up. He began shamelessly flattering a woman in green, but she just slapped him away. Pei Ling was stunned to see that Pei Hongnian wasn't even mad. Instead, he stayed on the ground, constantly apologizing to her. Pei Ling couldn't believe his senior was such a bootlicker. When the woman started to scold him again, Pei Ling couldn't just stand there and watch. He stepped forward and grabbed her wrist. Even though she was at the same power level as him, she couldn't break free. She immediately acted upset and asked Pei Hongnian why he was letting his junior bully her. Pei Hongnian jumped up and started lecturing Pei Ling, telling him to let her go. Pei Ling had no choice but to step aside and watch his senior go right back to being a sycophant. Eventually, Pei Hongnian told Pei Ling to just head to the administrative hall and find a place to live on his own while he followed the woman. Watching him walk away, Pei Ling just shook his head. He realized his senior was a lost cause. He said goodbye and headed to the administrative hall by himself to pick out a place to stay. Faced with the senior disciple in charge of housing, Pei Ling felt completely speechless. He never imagined that after crossing over to another world, he would still have to deal with the headache of picking a room. Before the senior could even finish his explanation, Pei Ling interrupted with a bright smile, asking if the senior would be willing to lend him some spirit stones, promising to pay them back. The senior disciple cut him off coldly and told him to just head west for 100 miles. Meanwhile, back on the floating ship, Zhen Jinshan was giving Li Liaoyu an update on Pei Ling. He was dying to know why she was paying so much attention to this kid. Li Liaoyu calmly set down her tea and asked if she had heard correctly that he was eager to go work in the dangerous mining ranges. Realizing he had overstepped, Zhen Jinshan apologized and hurried out of the room. Once outside, he started to wonder if his senior was using him to test the boy's potential. Inside, Li Liaoyu summoned her ghostly assistant, Wu Liao, and told her to keep a close watch on Pei Ling. After a very long walk, Pei Ling finally reached his new home. He was shocked to find that the place was actually quite luxurious, and he felt a bit guilty for misjudging the housing disciple. Walking into the courtyard, he saw that 3 of the doors were sealed with magical tags, meaning he had 3 roommates who were currently out. With some free time on his hands, he sat down with the sect's rulebook and his new blade, determined to study the laws. To him, these rules were the key to staying alive. He learned that the Heavy Mist sect was an ancient and powerful organization divided into different peaks. Each area had its own management. The Treasury Hall sold skills, the Treasure Hall sold gear, and the Enforcer Hall handled the punishments. However, as he read further, he was stunned to find that the rules were essentially just a price list. The summary of the entire handbook was simple. Everything can be settled with money. If disciples fought, they paid a fine. If you attacked someone, you paid spirit stones. Even if you caused a permanent injury or ended someone's life to take their treasure, the sect would look the other way, as long as you could pay the fine. Basically, if you were rich, you could do whatever you wanted. Pei Ling had hoped that following the rules would keep him safe, but he quickly realized that wouldn't be the case. Suddenly, he heard a noise outside, and his front door was kicked open by 3 men. One of them frowned and asked who he was. Pei Ling introduced himself politely, explaining he was a new student at the 4th level of his training. The 3 men looked at each other, communicating silently. They realized it wasn't the usual time for new students to arrive, so they figured he might have some special connections and decided to be cautious. One of them, named Li Si, introduced himself and his friends, Zhou Yi and Miao Chen. He told Pei Ling that since they were roommates now, they would look after him. Pei Ling was genuinely touched, thinking he had finally found some decent people in this dark place. Then, the 3 of them began asking him exactly how he had managed to get into the outer sect. Seeing that his new roommate seemed pretty calm, Pei Ling felt a bit of relief. He explained that his arrival had been arranged by an inner sect leader named Zhen Jinshan. However, Miao Chen didn't hold back, calling Zhen Jinshan a waste and claiming he only got his position because he was a distant relative of Li Liaoyu. Pei Ling was shocked to hear that Zhen Jinshan's reputation was so bad. Li Si tried to smooth things over, telling Pei Ling not to be offended since Miao Chen had some personal history with the leader. Then, Li Si started digging for more information about Pei Ling's connection to Li Liaoyu. Not wanting to cause trouble by using her name, Pei Ling quickly clarified that he was just lucky to get a promotion from Zhen Jinshan, and that it had nothing to do with the Saintess. As soon as he said that, Li Si's expression changed. He pointed at the life-loathing blade, and asked if it was the same famous weapon Zhen Jinshan used to win all his fights in the outer sect. Pei Ling tried to play it down, saying it was just an ordinary knife, but Li Si wasn't buying it. Zhou Yi cut straight to the chase and told Pei Ling to name his price because he wanted that blade. Pei Ling gave a polite smile and declined, saying it wouldn't be right to sell a gift from a senior. Unfortunately, the 3 of them didn't care about Zhen Jinshan's influence, and clearly didn't respect Pei Ling. Seeing that he wouldn't cooperate, Zhou Yi suddenly punched him. The force sent Pei Ling flying into the wall, kicking up a cloud of dust. When the air cleared, Pei Ling stood up, unharmed, but realizing that this wasn't going to end peacefully. He gripped his blade with both hands and told them that if they wanted the weapon, they'd have to prove they were strong enough to take it. Miao Chen immediately used a magical technique to fire 2 beams of energy at him. Pei Ling couldn't move fast enough and had to block with the blade. Even though he neutralized the attack, the impact made the heavy knife vibrate violently in his hands. Before he could recover, Zhou Yi rushed in for another punch. Pei Ling dodged, realizing they weren't holding anything back. Feeling enraged, he swung the blade fiercely to keep them at bay. Li Si, who had been watching from the side, noticed that Pei Ling didn't actually know any professional swordsmanship. He told his friends to just knock the blade away and recited a spell. 2 translucent ghosts appeared and charged at Pei Ling. He tried to slash at them, but to his surprise, they passed right through his body. It felt like a heavy hammer had struck his mind, making him dizzy and weak. However, he managed to pull himself together and swung the blade to drive the spirits off. Li Si was impressed by how quickly he recovered, wondering how his soul could be so stable. While Pei Ling was distracted by the ghosts, Zhou Yi saw an opening and landed a heavy blow on his chest. Pei Ling coughed up blood, and the blade slipped from his grip. Despite the pain, he managed to grab Zhou Yi by the collar and threw him into Li Si. Miao Chen was furious to see his friends on the ground and reminded Pei Ling that he was at a higher power level. He fired more energy beams, and this time, without his blade to block, Pei Ling took the hits directly. Seeing Pei Ling bleeding, Miao Chen rushed to grab the life-loathing blade. But just as he reached for it, Pei Ling stepped firmly on his arm. Pei Ling sneered, asking him if he really thought he could just take the knife. He then sent Miao Chen flying with a knee strike. Realizing how tough he was, all three roommates attacked at once. Pei Ling managed to pick up his blade and strike back, forcing them all to retreat, but he could feel that he was already reaching his limit. Seeing that Pei Ling had managed to survive his energy attacks and still had the strength to fight, Miao Chen started thinking about making a run for it. He took a deep breath and shouted that they wouldn't let Pei Ling off the hook for this. Pei Ling responded coldly, telling them that he would just finish all three of them instead. His voice wasn't loud, but the pure aggression in his tone terrified the roommates, making them wonder if they were actually going to lose their lives right then and there. However, a second later, Pei Ling suddenly turned and sprinted toward the gate with incredible speed, disappearing into the distance. After about 30 minutes of running, he stopped in a thick forest, breathing heavily. He felt a wave of relief, realizing he had almost forgotten the sect's laws. Getting rid of a fellow member would cost him 10,000 spirit stones in fines. Money he definitely didn't have. Reflecting on the fight, he realized his lack of formal training was a major weakness. He knew he had to master the bloodthirsty demon blade technique Li Lié had given him immediately. He opened his system and selected the skill to start training, but a notification popped up. It warned him that his injuries were too severe, and that training now would cause permanent damage. He needed to take a recovery pill first. Pei Ling got anxious, worried the system was about to force him to steal from another powerful leader. But to his relief, the system simply reached into his own pocket and found the recovery pills Li Lié had given him earlier. After he swallowed one, he felt a warm energy rising from his core. As the system guided the energy through his body, his injuries began to heal rapidly. But just as he was enjoying the feeling, the system sent another alert. It stated that the technique required the essence of other cultivators to continue. It then announced it would provide 3 suitable targets for free. Pei Ling's eyes went wide. He tried to cancel the command, but the system ignored him. It turned his body around and started heading right back toward his residence where the 3 roommates were. Meanwhile, back at the house, the 3 men were having a meeting. They were convinced Pei Ling had some sort of secret and planned to hunt him down the next day to expose him. Suddenly, Pei Ling kicked the door open and marched back in. The 3 were shocked to see him. Li Si started to yell at him, but before he could finish, Pei Ling's blade moved in a flash, ending the argument instantly. Without pausing, the system forced him to use the fallen opponent's energy to power his training. Zhou Yi and Miao Chen were horrified and enraged by the sight. Zhou Yi jumped into the air to land a heavy punch, but the system immediately paused the session, noting an external attack and asking for its usual 5-star rating. Now back in control of his own body, Pei Ling dodged the strike. He knew there was no going back now. It was him or them. With his eyes full of determination, he thrust his blade forward, and Zhou Yi collapsed as his strength failed him. Furious, Miao Chen unleashed 3 consecutive sword energy blasts. Knowing how dangerous this move was, Pei Ling didn't dare hold back, and immediately activated the bloodthirsty demon blade technique. With a single powerful swing, he managed to disperse the incoming energy. Realizing his standard attacks weren't working, Miao Chen went all out, using both hands to form complex seals to trigger the full power of a magical sword talisman he was holding. Sensing the overwhelming energy radiating from the talisman, Pei Ling felt a surge of fear. He threw the life-loathing blade with all his might, aiming straight at Miao Chen. However, Miao Chen just smirked, mocking him for being too slow. A massive surge of spiritual energy gathered in his arm and surged toward Pei Ling, putting him in immediate, life-threatening danger. A massive explosion followed, shattering the entire courtyard and sending a thick cloud of dust into the air. When the smoke finally cleared, Pei Ling was nowhere to be seen. Miao Chen wiped some blood from his mouth, feeling confident that the powerful talisman from his older brother had completely obliterated his opponent. But his relief turned to pure terror when a voice spoke from directly behind him, asking if he had underestimated him. Miao Chen collapsed to the ground, begging for his life and mentioning his brother's status as an inner disciple. Pei Ling showed no mercy, delivering a final, decisive strike. Surveying the ruined courtyard, Pei Ling sighed, glad the struggle was finally over. However, when the system popped up again asking for a 5-star rating, he lost his temper. He realized that according to the sect rules, taking out 3 outer disciples could cost him up to 90,000 spirit stones in fines. He hoped they had enough treasures on them to cover the debt. He searched their belongings but only found some basic medicine and 3 storage pouches. To his frustration, the pouches were magically sealed and he couldn't open them yet. Since the battle was done, he decided to use what was left of their energy for his training. He triggered the 1-click cultivation again, but the system noted a lack of energy and claimed it would provide 2 more cultivators for free. Pei Ling was confused until he heard 2 cries of pain nearby. It turned out Zhou Yi and Miao Chen had been faking their deaths, and his blade was now actively draining their remaining life force. He couldn't help but marvel at how sneaky people in this sect could be. With the energy requirement met, the system took over his body to continue the training right there at the scene. Each swing of the blade sent shockwaves through the courtyard, making a complete mess of the area. He leaped out of the courtyard, his movements becoming a blur as the wind howled with every strike. Even though the situation was a mess, Pei Ling couldn't help but feel overjoyed at the raw power of the blood slaughter blade technique. Wu Liu, the ghostly assistant who had been watching from the shadows, was stunned. She hadn't expected the boy to improve so fast. She realized there was definitely something magnetic and unusual about him. Back in his own mind, the system notified Pei Ling that he had officially mastered the blood slaughter blade technique. For once, Pei Ling was actually happy with the system. He decided he would reluctantly give it a 3-star rating this time. But as he snapped back to reality and looked at the mess in front of him, he remembered the looming 90,000 spirit stone fine. He knew he had to grab his gear and get out of there. However, as he stared out at the endless, jagged mountain ranges, he realized he was completely lost. There was no clear path out of the sect. Feeling desperate, he buried his 3 roommates, hoping it would buy him some time before the Enforcer Hall investigators showed up. With no other options, he decided to seek help from the only person he knew, his bootlicking senior, Pei Hongnian. But when he pushed open the courtyard door, he witnessed something truly embarrassing. Pei Hongnian was passionately kissing a portrait of the woman he was obsessed with, Sun Yinan. Pei Ling was cringing hard, thinking he had picked the absolute worst time to visit. But since his life was on the line, he pretended he hadn't seen a thing, and greeted his senior warmly. To his surprise, Pei Hongnian looked terrified, and told him to stay back, worried that Sun Yinan would be jealous if she saw them together. Pei Ling played along, apologizing for potentially upsetting his, quote, sister-in-law. Hearing that term made Pei Hongnian's face turn bright red with joy. Seizing the moment, Pei Ling asked how to leave the sect, claiming he wanted to go find a special gift to apologize to her. Moved to tears by the gesture, Pei Hongnian explained the geography. He told him that Huayan Peak was too far to travel on foot. He would need to rent a Yin Corpse cloud for 10 spirit stones. When Pei Ling asked to borrow the 10 stones, Pei Hongnian's attitude flipped instantly. He explained he had given every single stone he owned to Sun Yinan and had nothing left. He told Pei Ling to go to the miscellaneous tasks department to earn the money himself, and warned him not to come back. Pei Ling didn't even want to argue with him. He headed straight to the tasks department, hoping to find a quick way out. He inserted his bone nameplate into the slot and looked at the list of jobs. He scratched his head at the bizarre options. Mail delivery, 1 month for 3 spirit stones. Beast care, 1 month rewarded only with animal droppings. Ghostface grass hunting, 5 spirit stones. At this rate, he realized he wouldn't save up for his fines in 10 lifetimes. Finally, he saw a mission that paid 800 spirit stones, but it required a level 6 cultivation, and he was only at level 4. Then, he had an idea. He didn't actually care about the pay. If he could just join a team for a mission outside the walls, he could sneak away and escape the sect forever. But finding a team was harder than he expected. The first group rejected him for being under level 6. The second group just looked down on his strength. The third group told him straight up that joining a mission at his level would be a suicide mission. Just when Pei Ling was starting to feel hopeless, a heavy hand landed on his shoulder. A very large woman told him that even though his level was low, she wouldn't look down on him. Terrified, Pei Ling scrambled away, joking that she'd probably look even better once she slimmed down, and begged her to spare him for now. Meanwhile, in a corner of the department, one of Sun Yinan's followers was busy gossiping. He told her that Pei Ling was looking for a team and mocked him for thinking a level 4 student could handle sect missions. Sun Yinan smiled coldly, saying that since Pei Ling had dared to annoy her, she would give him a helping hand today. Pei Ling was feeling the pressure. Having just arrived in this world, he was already stuck with a massive debt of 90,000 spirit stones, making life in the Heavy Mist sect unbearable. He just wanted to join a group, get outside the walls, and disappear. But his low level made him a target for ridicule, and almost cost him his innocence with the commander's sister. Just as he was stuck, he overheard a group nearby looking for teammates. Specifically, they only wanted newcomers at levels 3 and 4. Pei Ling's spirits lifted instantly. This was exactly what he needed. He stepped forward quickly and introduced himself to the leader, confirming he was at the 4th level. The leader asked if he needed time to prepare, but Pei Ling insisted on leaving immediately. He didn't want to stay in that hellish sect for even one more second. He had no idea that he was walking right into a trap. Earlier, Sun Yinan had approached this leader, a man named Chen. She told him that Pei Ling's potential made him a perfect blood sacrifice for Chen's dark rituals. Chen had hesitated at first, worried about Pei Ling's connection to Zhen Jinshan, but Sun Yinan convinced him that Zhen Jinshan didn't actually care about the boy. If he did, why would he let him wander around looking for a team alone? Hearing this, Chen's worries vanished. He looked at the happy, unsuspecting Pei Ling with a sinister smile, thinking he finally had what he needed to upgrade his magical soul summoning banner. Soon, the group headed out. Sitting on a Yin Corpse cloud, Pei Ling felt great. It was much smoother and faster than the flimsy paper boat he had used before. As they traveled, Chen Huan patted him on the back and introduced the rest of the crew. He identified himself as a level 6 cultivator, and introduced his sister, Chen Mei, who was at level 4. The other 3, Wang Xian, Zhang Zhongqin, and Zhao Tasha, were all at level 5. Pei Ling quickly saluted the group, introducing himself and confirming he was at the 4th level of the Foundation Establishment realm. Chen Huan explained that the primary goal of the mission was to provide real-world training for his sister, Chen Mei, who was also at the 4th level. Pei Ling immediately acted loyal, promising Chen Huan that he would do everything in his power to protect her. In reality, he was already plotting his exit. He had no intention of babysitting anyone's sister. He just wanted to get far away from the sect. He figured that once they were out in the open, the world would be his to explore. However, something felt a bit off. He looked at the scenery passing by and casually asked what else their bone tokens were used for besides identification. The answer he got made his heart sink. He learned that outside the sect, the token was the only proof of his identity, a way to call for help, and most importantly, a GPS-like device for tracking his location in an emergency. Pei Ling was shocked to realize the useless bone was actually a tracking device. He realized he'd have to get rid of it the moment he made his break. He scratched his head and asked a follow-up. What would happen if someone who owed the sect money decided to toss their token and just disappear? One of the seniors, Xiao, smiled and shared a chilling story. She told him about a disciple who owed only 100 spirit stones and tried to run away during a mission. The sect didn't just let it go. They sent 3 powerful hunters to chase him for 20 years. In the end, they didn't just find him, they took out his entire family. Pei Ling was terrified. If the sect was that persistent over 100 stones, he couldn't imagine what they'd do for his 90,000 stone debt. He realized his plan to run away was basically a death sentence. He'd have to stay and actually work to pay off the debt. He asked about the mission details and learned they were hunting a 6th level awakened beast, which had the strength of a level 6 cultivator. His specific job was to keep Chen Mei safe. When he eagerly asked how much he'd get paid, Chen Huan told him he could earn 20 spirit stones if he did a good job. Pei Ling was stunned. He was thinking about his 90,000 stone debt and realized 20 stones wouldn't even make a dent. Chen Huan, however, misread his expression, thinking the newcomer was just overwhelmed by how much money 20 stones was. He felt a bit of contempt for what he saw as Pei Ling's small-town perspective. Chen Mei mentioned that while 20 stones was a decent start, the real money was in specialized skills like crafting tools, making medicine, or creating talismans. She noted that Pei Hongnian actually had a huge talent for talismans, and was almost chosen for special training before Sun Yinan's drama ruined his chances. Pei Ling was surprised and asked how he had managed to impress the instructors. Apparently, Pei Hongnian was considered a prodigy because he successfully drew his very first talisman after only 2 years of practice. When Pei Ling heard that a, quote, prodigy takes 2 full years to show their talent, he felt his heart sink. With only 3 months to pay off his massive debt, those timelines weren't going to work for him. Just then, Zhang Zhongqian, who had been quiet the whole time, suggested a friendly sparring session. Pei Ling was curious about the team's actual power, so he agreed. He squared his shoulders and threw a straightforward punch at Zhang. Seeing how simple and unrefined the move looked, Zhang smiled and decided to take the hit head-on without moving. However, a second later, a massive force slammed into him. He was nearly humiliated and had to scramble back quickly to stay on his feet. Realizing Pei Ling was much stronger than he looked, Zhang stopped holding back and attacked with everything he had. Since he couldn't dodge in such a tight space, Pei Ling had to endure the blows. After several exchanges, he began to feel the pressure of fighting someone at the 5th level and started to lose ground. Chen Huan stepped in to stop the fight before it went too far. Pei Ling bowed politely and thanked Zhang for the lesson. During the conversation that followed, Huang Xian asked why Pei Ling hadn't used the large blade he was carrying. Pei Ling just smiled and explained that since Zhang was fighting barehanded, it wouldn't have been fair to draw a weapon. In his head, though, he was determined not to show his cards. He didn't want anyone else targeting the life-loathing blade. As the journey continued in silence, Chen Huan was secretly thrilled. He watched Pei Ling, who seemed totally unaware of any danger, and marveled at how strong the boy's physical body was. He thought to himself that Pei Ling was the perfect final ingredient he needed to finish his Dark Soul banner. He even whispered a promise to the others that this mission might be their ticket into the inner sect. Tasha immediately pledged her full support to help Chen Huan reach that goal. Pei Ling noticed that everyone suddenly seemed to be in a great mood, though he couldn't figure out why. Chen Mei approached him with a concerned look and asked if he was hurt from the sparring, offering him a few chi blood pills. Pei Ling was happy to take them, thinking he'd never turn down a chance to get free supplies. With everyone seemingly satisfied, the team traveled for a few more days until they reached their destination, Screw Mountain City. Since the city lord was busy with urgent matters, the group was greeted by the head steward of the mansion to begin their mission. As they entered the mansion, Pei Ling noticed that the air felt incredibly fresh and full of energy. Chen Mei laughed and explained that the city lord was an expert in magical formations and had installed a system to draw spiritual energy into the building. Chen Huan quickly warned Pei Ling that since the city lord was a senior cultivator, he had to be on his best behavior when they met. Pei Ling nodded repeatedly, promising to be respectful. The city lord, Duan Muyan, soon arrived to greet them. He looked to be in his 40s, with a dignified look and a short, well-groomed beard. He had a very sharp, capable energy about him that commanded attention. The group stood up immediately to show their respect. After some small talk, Chen Huan explained their 2 goals, dealing with a flower creature outside the city and hunting a purple-eyed ferret in the nearby mountains. Unexpectedly, the city lord's expression turned serious. He told them that while they were likely prepared for those tasks, a new danger had appeared. A powerful human-faced spider had moved into the mountains to lay its eggs, right near where the ferret lived. Pei Ling and Chen Huan were both stunned, but for very different reasons. Chen Huan was worried that this new monster would ruin his secret plans for the sacrifice, while Pei Ling was terrified that his 20 spirit stone reward was about to disappear. Seeing them hesitate, the city lord offered a bit of hope. He had already mapped out where the spider was active, and suggested that if they were extremely careful and avoided that specific area, they could still finish their mission. Chen Huan felt a wave of relief as he took the map. He was determined to avoid the spider so he could finally complete his soul banner. Later that night, back in his guest room, Pei Pei Ling was doing some mental math. He realized that doing basic missions would never get him the 90,000 spirit stones he needed. He even started wondering if he'd eventually be forced to sell his prized blade. Just as he was lost in thought, a bone-chilling cold began to fill the room. Pei Ling knew something was wrong and threw open his door, only to find the courtyard thick with the suffocating stench of decay and echoing with eerie moans. The situation was clearly dangerous, and he shouted for his teammates as a zombie suddenly lunged at him. He barely managed to block the attack with his blade, his mind spinning. How could the guest quarters of the city lord's own mansion turn into such a nightmare? Before he could catch his breath, another creature attacked from behind. In that moment of panic, a thought flashed through his mind. Could this be her? He desperately yelled out that he had already mastered the blood-devouring blade technique and begged Wu Liu to show herself. With the massive debt hanging over his head, he had completely lost track of the 10-day deadline Li Liye had given him. As soon as he spoke, a low hum vibrated through the darkness. The shadows around him seemed to turn into thousands of tiny swimming fish that scattered into the night. Simultaneously, the air turned freezing, and he felt a cold, soft body press against his back. Two pale arms reached over his shoulders and wrapped slowly around his neck. Wu Liu's voice whispered tenderly in his ear, teasing him for making her chase him all this way. After their intense, 2-week training session on the ship, Pei Ling had learned that being close to a saintess wasn't exactly a luxury. It was exhausting. He quickly explained that he was only out here on missions to earn enough spirit stones to pay his debts. Wu Liu sounded amused as she asked if he was referring to the fines for taking out Miao Chen and the others. Pei Ling was stunned that she had been watching him so closely. He tried to act casual, complimenting her on her incredible tracking skills. Wu Liu laughed, realizing he had used his roommates as practice materials for his dark skills. She noted that even with help, the blood-devouring blade technique was usually impossible to learn in just 10 days. Her tone suddenly turned icy as she gripped his throat, demanding to know what secret he was hiding. Pei Ling felt paralyzed, as if he were trapped in a block of ice. Wu Liu's sharp fingernail traced across his chest, and he felt certain she was about to cut him open. Just as he thought his life was over, several glowing chains appeared out of nowhere and slammed into Wu Liu, pinning her down. Her face twisted in pain as she begged her master for mercy, promising not to touch him. As soon as she apologized, the chains vanished. Wu Liu's attitude flipped instantly, and she started acting sweet toward Pei Ling again. However, she whispered a warning that he should try to annoy her master. That way, she'd finally be allowed to finish him off. Pei Ling was at a loss for words. It seemed even the ghosts in this sect were completely unstable. Wu Liu tried to lecture him on the dangers of the dark techniques he was using, but Pei Ling didn't really care. He had the system to handle the risks for him. His only real concern was finding a way to get his hands on those 90,000 spirit stones. Pei Ling looked at Wu Liu with hope in his eyes and grabbed her hand, asking if she knew of any way to get 90,000 spirit stones quickly. Wu Liu gave him a look of pure disbelief. She told him that with a physique as impressive as his, he could just ask her master for the money directly, though she teased him about wanting to live off a soft meal provided by a woman. When Pei Ling hesitated to take that route, Wu Liu waved her hand dismissively and told him he'd have to figure it out himself. Before vanishing, she tossed him a new manual for a blood escape technique. She gave him another terrifying ultimatum: master it within 7 days, or face certain doom. Pei Ling sighed with relief once she was gone, realizing that if even a ghost servant was this much trouble, Li Liye herself must be a nightmare. He knew he had no choice but to start practicing. The next morning, Pei Ling was still stressing over his massive debt when he heard a knock. It was Chen Mei, telling him that her brother and the others needed extra time to prepare before leaving the city, so they would be resting for the day. She asked if he had any plans. Feeling a bit flustered by her friendliness, he told her he was tired from the trip and planned to just stay in his room. Chen Mei seemed unusually happy to hear this and hurried off to find her brother. Pei Ling scratched his head, wondering why his staying in the room was such great news. He felt like something was definitely off, but he decided to take the opportunity to sneak out to the local market to see if he could find a way to make some quick cash. While he was wandering, an old man approached him, trying to sell him a secret ancestral technique. Pei Ling wasn't falling for it, and when the man became too pushy, he simply pulled out his bone token from the Heavy Mist sect. The old man's eyes went wide, and he immediately apologized and scurried away. Pei Ling was surprised that the reputation of his underworld sect actually had some practical benefits. Suddenly, Pei Ling's expression shifted. He spotted Chen Mei and Zhang Zhongqin in the market when they were supposed to be resting. He followed them cautiously, unaware that the rest of the team, led by their formation expert Xiao Tasha, was already out in the wilderness setting up a dark ritual. They had found a spot thick with yin energy, the perfect place for a soul devourer formation. The team realized they were short on the magical paper needed for the talismans. Chen Mei had volunteered to go back to the city with Zhang to buy supplies. When another teammate asked why she wasn't back at the mansion watching Pei Ling, she bragged that she had secretly marked him with a special fragrance. She was confident their tracking bees would be able to find him no matter where he tried to hide. Pei Ling, listening from the shadows, was completely baffled. He overheard them talking about the expensive materials and the complex formation they were building. He couldn't understand why they were going through so much trouble and effort just to catch a single ferret. Right at that moment, a street swindler popped up out of nowhere. He told Pei Ling that he had a sharp eye for quality and offered him a treasure that could hide his spiritual energy on the cheap. Startled, Pei Ling grabbed the cloth and took off running. He tossed a bottle of medicine to the old man to settle the debt as he went, but the commotion caught Zhang Zhongqin's eye. Zhang mentioned that he thought he'd just seen Pei Ling and told Chen Mei to release her tracking bees immediately. Pei Ling ducked into a dark alley, worrying that if he were caught out here after saying he'd be resting, It would be impossible to explain. But before he could get away, a voice from behind questioned him, asking if it was really him and why he wasn't at home resting as he'd claimed. Pei Ling waved his hands frantically, trying to say it was all a big misunderstanding. Zhang Zhengqian didn't buy it. He stepped forward and grabbed Pei Ling's shoulder, asking why he'd run away if it were just a misunderstanding. He accused him of potentially overhearing something he wasn't supposed to know. Pei Ling awkwardly made up a story about not being able to sleep and wanting to take a walk without bothering anyone. Zhang signaled Chen Mei, whispering that the kid was acting suspicious and they couldn't just let him go. But Chen Mei disagreed, reminding him that their dark ritual was set for the next day. She suggested they just take him back and keep a very close eye on him. She then grabbed Pei Ling's arm and gave him a seductive look, teasing him for being reckless in a strange city. Pei Ling was amazed at how fast she could flip her personality. Zhang joined in, acting like a protective teammate and saying they should always look out for one another. Pei Ling apologized awkwardly, while Chen Mei gave him a playful warning not to do it again. As they walked him back, Pei Ling was confused. He asked why they weren't buying the materials for the formation anymore. Zhang just smirked and said the others would handle the supplies, but getting Pei Ling back to his room was the priority. As night fell, Pei Ling lay in bed, feeling more uneasy by the second. It made no sense that they'd abandon their shopping trip just to escort him back. Plus, they were being way too friendly. A terrifying thought crossed his mind. What if the target of their mission wasn't a beast at all, but actually him? Just as he was spiraling into suspicion, a sudden noise outside jolted him awake. It turned out that Chen Huan and the rest of the team had finished setting up their trap and were finally back. Pei Ling tried to eavesdrop on their conversation, but Chen Huan spotted him immediately and told him to get some rest. Once Pei Ling was out of earshot, Chen Huan asked for an update, and Zhang Zhengqian told him all about Pei Ling sneaking out during the day. Chen Huan didn't seem worried at all. He confidently told the group that they would just take turns watching him through the night so he couldn't run. He planned to lead Pei Ling into a powerful illusion trap created by Xiao Tasha the next day. Chen Huan mentioned that he knew just how effective the trap was because he once got stuck in it for 3 days himself. He was certain that once Pei Ling stepped inside, no amount of skill would save him. And with that, this video ends. Like and subscribe for the next part.